to the nation in maintaining morale.
The August 31st edition of Time magazine hyped the highway as a job for Paul Bunyan. But in reality, the project was stalled. With 460 miles left to go, a new problem made it unlikely the road would be finished before winter. The engineers had struck permafrost.
Permafrost is simply ground that's been frozen 2 or more years. The temperature of the permafrost was about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And when the Corps of Engineers removed the vegetation off the ground, they found a hard surface. It changed the surface temperature of about 3 degrees Fahrenheit, and so it was now above the freezing temperature and then thawed very rapidly. And as it thawed, it changed in character from a hard surface for them to drive on to mud, which they, of course, got stuck.
The road building method that had allowed the engineers to build over 800 miles in 2 months suddenly had failed them. Work on the northern portion of the highway stopped.
The engineers and construction workers entered the far northwest in a state of incredible naivety. Very few people had any experience with constructing highways in cold weather areas. The scientific information on building across permafrost virtually non-existent.
The Army engineers scrambled to find a solution. Since they could not go around the permafrost, they needed to keep the ground frozen. It took them 6 weeks of trial and error to figure out how to deal with permafrost. To protect the ground, the engineers decided to sideline the bulldozers as they cut down trees by hand to immediately insulate the surface with corduroy.
The Army engineers were problem solvers. In combat, you have to come up with a solution to whatever problem you're facing very quickly and efficiently in order to move the war effort forward. They had not known about permafrost, but they were able to adapt what they knew to the problem at hand.
Their solution worked, but reduced construction to only a mile a day. At the start of October, the temperature began to drop sharply. Permafrost was no longer their biggest problem. What would be one of the coldest winters on record had arrived. With only 166 miles left, 2 regiments, 1 black, 1 white, struggled to close the last gap of the highway.
Working in the cold climates, 40 and 50 below zero, is always a very real challenge. Anytime you're working in the cold, men, equipment moves slower, the logistics become more difficult. The metals that they had at 40 below zero became very brittle and broke very, very easily.
The equipment that we had was not designed for sub-zero weather. Trucks we had to keep running 24 hours a day. If you didn't, you'd have to get underneath the truck with a blowtorch and heat up the transmission and the rear axle before it would move.
At 40 below zero, skin froze in a matter of seconds.
It was actually a fight for survival. On one case, I spilled some gasoline on my clothing. It evaporated, and when I went to pull my coat off, it pulled the flesh off too.
Minor mistakes can be deadly. If your vehicle breaks down in the Arctic, walking a few miles can actually cost you your life.
Mile by mile, the 2 regiments pressed on. Each day their bulldozers growled closer and closer. At 4 p.m. on October 25th, just south of the Alaska-Canada border, the engineers closed the last gap of the highway. In less than 8 months, the United States Army Corps of Engineers had conquered a forbidding wilderness and built the first overland route from the continental United States to Alaskan territory. The 1,500-mile military supply line was hailed as an unprecedented engineering feat.
The Alaskan Highway is dedicated at Soldier Summit, Yukon Territory, by officials of the United States and Canada. Completed with amazing...
The building of the Alaska Highway represented one of the great triumphs of the U.S. Army in 1942.
And they made sure that everybody across North America heard about it. It was in the newsreels, it was on the radio programs, it was in the newspapers.
You know where he was in Vietnam?
The American Army was trying to send messages of reassurance and messages to the enemy. We're serious about this. We will do anything we absolutely have to do.
Just after the final gap was closed, the Army restaged the historic meeting of the two lead bulldozer drivers, a black corporal from Pennsylvania and a white private from Texas. Within 4 months, the military would splash the photograph across the pages of Yank, the Army Weekly, in an article glorifying the achievements of the African-American engineers.
Super.
It was not
And we did it.
a good experience.
The work of God, they said we could.
Very little
But the worst one, couldn't read or write. But they said they couldn't use heavy equipment. So these men became experts at heavy machine.
And there were friends of his still friends.
They did work that nobody thought they could do, and the areas nobody thought they could survive.
Vietnam does talk about it. Triple undergrads.
And he'll tell me that he went somewhere that he did it last night. There were classic stories about his final
The only way, the best way to do his disclosure was for all Americans to join the United States.
By the time the engineers completed their work on the highways,
I know, I was the girls club in Eagle River, and she's come down with uniforms.
in the summer of 1943, U.S. forces drove the Japanese out of the ocean islands. Japan never advanced to Alaska. The Alaska Highway did play a vital role in World War II. Nearly 8,000 Lebanese aircraft flown from America to Russia by means of the highway and Northwest Station helped the Soviet Union triumph Germany. Fierce battles in Europe and the Pacific soon overshadowed the building of the Alaska Highway. By war's end, it was all but forgotten.
I took a part in building what was considered one of the greatest engineering projects during the last century. Some people say it was something only sitting down on an average. They built 1,500 miles of road in 8 months. What we went through, nightmares, stuff like that. I used to
really interesting place. Since we're writing about which is one of the two most violent civil wars we had in the South Street, and it was lost from the trace. The Japanese had a method of safety net. So the size of the skipper. So the researcher puts that money in
the artillery pieces off Kiska, which the Japanese occupied along with Attu, and except scientists aren't allowed to go ashore on Kiska now because there's a lot of unexploded ordnance lying around. And the rifle nearest us here is an Arisaka Type 99. That was a standard infantry rifle, the Japanese, and they have a great reputation as being rugged and accurate and all that. A lot of them have had their chrysanthemum ground off. On the receiver, there's an emblem, which is an emblem that is for the emperor, and when they knew they were losing the war, rather than having the emperor lose face, they ground off most of those chrysanthemums. So you can see the ground off area just in front of the Japanese kanji characters on there. The kanji characters mean 99 type. And there's 2 bayonets there for the Arisaka. Both of them have curvy quillings. And that's the purpose of that, was if you get into a bayonet fight and you can get him to slide his bayonet down inside the quilling, you can just with a twist of your wrist, you can flip his rifle out of his hand. But they decided that was another manufacturing step, so they left them off later in the war. And earlier in the war, they made the scabbards out of steel. Then steel got hard to come by, so later in the war, they made it out of wood. And they're 2 pieces of wood joined together and tied with string and varnished. And the handgun is an Ambu type 14. Good grief, couldn't think of the number. And it's an 8mm handgun. Our guys called it the Japanese Luger, but it has nothing in common with a Luger except it shoots bullets. But the mechanism is entirely different. And around on the other side is a 7mm little brother of the Type 14. It's called a baby Nambu. And those were carried by officers and people behind the lines, because they're really not much of a combat weapon. But you can see the ground off area. There's some of the kanji characters, and there's that round dot, and then right ahead is the ground off area. Arisakas with an intact chrysanthemum are pretty rare. I have 2 of them. One of them with an intact chrysanthemum, one of them with a not intact. So